Hi everybody, welcome to Art Day. Today I'm having a mixed media project that I'm gonna start in a hot second here. There it is. So I made a bookmark for my partner who's a big bookworm and loves to read a lot and needs to have a fancy bookmark, of course. And I started with a mixed media paper, a little bit of a thicker paper. I think it is 450 grams per square meter. But I'm not all that sure because it's just a scrap piece from another art project. And I, started gluing down old book pages of a book I'm pretty much only using for backgrounds on artwork. And I, glued the book pages to my mixed media paper to have this as part of a background and have, parts of it shine through in the end. So it's a reference to his love for books, but the main, what's the word? Oh gosh. The focus, the main point on this bookmark is actually from another nerdy thing that he likes a lot and that we partially do together, which is for Warhammer 40k. He plays it, he paints minis, and I'm painting minis with him, though I'm not playing Warhammer. I just love painting the minis, and I chose one of the creatures that he plays in his army. So there's a reference to him loving the books and a reference to Warhammer. Another thing that he really loves and spends a lot of time with. So that was the plan, just as a little gift. Something handmade, something artsy that pretty much combines two of his big hobbies. So once I had the paper down, as you can see, I just trimmed the edges to get rid of any excess paper that I didn't need. And then I started painting. So I'm pretty much layering things in a hot minute. And I used acrylic paint, very specific paint actually. Gotta repair some of the bits. Gotta make sure all the paper really sticks to the mixed media paper there. Coming back to the acrylics though, I use Deco Art Americana acrylics. They are special in the sense of they have a chalky finish and you can layer, for example, colored pencils on top, which I liked a lot. So I have this little set here with lots of different kinds of colors. Unfortunately, I didn't find any substitute on the German market, so I did actually order those sets. I have two of them from the US. So yay, carbon footprint, not that great, but it's a lovely supply, a lovely material, and I really like it for some mixed media stuff, especially if I know that I want to layer colored pencils on top. So the first go, I went with the light blue and blotted away a few bits and pieces on top just to have the book page come through a little more and be visible. And I watered down the first go a lot because I wanted to make sure that parts of the book page are visible. For the next two layers, I'm going in with other shades of blue, or I think I did actually go in with the same shade of blue for the second layer, but not have it watered down, so there's a lot of coverage going on. But I had to wait a couple of minutes in between to not have my paper buckle too much. So you can see I'm taking the same blue, but I'm going in straight away with a dry brush. I didn't even use a damp brush and just feathered out the light blue from the bottom towards the top, because I knew I wanted to have my Warhammer picture on the bottom of the bookmark and have it fade out towards the upper part. So there, I didn't just play with my supplies here and see where it takes me while creating. I had this one planned out in advance in my head. So that's why I'm working quite well, straightforward and not in a playful way there. For the background, I went for both sides of the bookmark, just to have it look, well, complete and sophisticated and finished. So I just flipped my bookmark over to the other side and did the same thing, layering the light blue without any water, then going in with a darker blue, mixing it with the wash that I had used as a first layer on this bookmark, mixing the two together, and then going in with the dark blue in its pure form and shading from the bottom towards the top. I used blue because the color scheme of the minis that he's painting is quite blue. You will see that later on when I paint the creature. So I wanted to have that look of the icy world that he's using on the minis. I wanted to have that replicated, hence I used quite a lot of blue for the icy look around it. Went in and painted kind of a moon or maybe a planet. You can decide what it is. For me, it's a moon. So I went in with, I think it was 3 layers of white, because I didn't want to see the text from the book shining through the moon. And I had quite the damp brush. So I had a little too much water for my personal taste. You can see the letters of the book page are coming through. I didn't want to have that showing, and I had a little too much water for the white to be opaque in the first go. So I just went over it again, as you can see. Another layer of white, and then I added a little bit of blue here and there and blended everything together with even more white to have a very light blue tint to the moon or planet or whatever it is for you. For me, I'm not sure. One day it's a moon and one day it's a planet. It doesn't matter. It's just a backdrop for the focal point. Once that was dry, I took my graphite paper and my Terranid creature and just went over it and transferred the outlines to the paper. There it is. Because the thing with mixed media pages or mixed media bookmarks is I could have drawn the creature myself, but erasing on top of acrylic paint is really difficult. You take away quite a bit of color. Again, it would have been blotchy maybe, and I didn't want that, so I opted for transferring a reference photo that I found to the paper via to the bookmark via graphite paper, and not go for drawing or painting this picture on my own. Also, this piece took me, I think it was 2.5 hours already, so I didn't have too much time to put in, because I had, well, very many other projects to do that took another, I don't know, a dozen hours. So I wanted to squeeze that in rather fast, quote unquote fast. And that just saves a lot of time. Otherwise, I would have drawn the Tyranid on my Wacom and then transferred it. But I went for the time saver with this particular one. And since I'm not using this for commercial purposes, I think it's fine to, well, use a picture from the internets. So then I just went in with all the light blue bits that come with the Tyranid, and that he had painted light blue on his minis too. So if you watch my vlogs, you saw that I painted one of the minis of the army, and it's finished, and I'm going forward with the next couple of minis, painting them too. And I use pretty much the same color scheme that he used for other minis of the army already. So I was very familiar with the color scheme, and I just, well, used that same color scheme on this 2D painting as well, just to, well, have the connection with his personal army. You can see on the reference photos that there's a different kind of color scheme. So the blue tint is really just his army. And I, well, integrated that into the painting to make it his bookmark. Went over all the dark blue bits next. And the plan pretty much was, and I'm also executing that plan, to have the acrylics used as the base coat, the base color for the focal point, and then shade everything with colored pencils. Since this bookmark is really tiny, it is quite difficult to do the shading with acrylics and still have very nuanced shading. So I opted for the other solution, which is just base coating everything with one layer of acrylics, pretty much just block in the colors, and then do details with colored pencil on top. Because I do have very thin brushes. As you can see, I'm using quite the thin brush. But shading those bits, I would have needed even smaller brushes. And, well, I don't really have them for acrylics. I do have them for watercolors, and I didn't want to use one of those brushes and potentially ruining one of my brushes. So that was a thought that went into planning out this bookmark, thinking, okay, what do I have in my studio? Is it possible to work like that? Is it going to be a pain in the ass to do that bookmark, or can I do it in a way that I really enjoy and that looks pretty well in the end? So I opted for the colored pencils because I can really sharpen to a very neat and very thin point, and then go in and add tiny details and shadows and such. So I thought, okay, this is way less strenuous on my hand and therefore on my brain, and I will enjoy it a lot more. So that was the way to go. This is how I planned it. Just going in with light buttermilk. having kind of like the bony look. So this is supposed to be bone. And I think that worked really well. I could have gone for a warm gray too, but since he's using a cream color for the bones on his minis, I again went in and just copied his color scheme, and therefore went with light buttermilk. And I think it works really well because the light buttermilk is more on the warm part of the spectrum of colors, and all the other shades in there, so all the blues, are more on the cooler side of the spectrum, and therefore the bone parts stand out, but also repeat the background, because the paper of the book pages that I use is also quite yellowish, so it all just comes together very nicely. The Tyranid is standing out, but then again, color-wise, it is not. It is pretty much replicating the background, which I think is a nice little subtle touch. Went in with 2 shades of dark red, one of them being a little bit of a cooler shade, like a raspberry red, and then shading on top with a Tuscan red, which is more of a warmer, almost brownish red, to just deepen some of the colors in the mouth, pretty much, of that Tyranid, adding some teeth with a little bit of that bone color. I'm gonna go on top with gel pen later and make him even brighter, even whiter. But for now, that is pretty much the block in of the colors. So I did let that dry again, because you don't want to put your pencils on top of wet or damp acrylic paint. That's no good idea. And then I just went in with the polychromos, outlined some of those dark blue armor bits. They're almost like turtles, I think, or an armadillo or something. They do have those, what are they called? Words. You know what I mean. In German, the German word is Schildplatte, by the way. Do I have my phone? Can I look it up? No, I don't. Well, there's your German lesson of the day, but I think you know what I mean. Then I used 2 shades of turquoise to shade those light blue bits, like those weapons, and also kind of like the joints and part of the ribs. And just went back and forth with turquoise and dark indigo to shade all of those bits and pieces, just to bring them together. I'm gonna use Payne's Gray and Black later on to do a little more of sort of an outline work. So pretty much bringing that Tyranid forward by having it separated from the background, because the colors are, well, the same. So by only shading it without the gray and the black, the creature really doesn't stand out that much from the background, because it's, well, the same colors. But by adding a little bit of a dark gray or a black, I really got to make him pop into the foreground. For the bones, I used warm grays, 2 shades. I think it was warm gray 4 and warm gray 2. And the lighter one, the number 2 pencil, I just used to blend out the darker warm gray a little bit and just have a kind of like a smoother transition towards the pieces of the bones that I didn't shade, where you can see pretty much the acrylic paint shine through. And there's the little Payne's Gray, that small pencil that comes in too. So having a cooler gray on top of the warm gray again made the shadows pop, make the shadows richer and darker. And I also shaded a little bit of indigo on top of some of those bone parts. Not too much, because I didn't want to have the whole painting look quote-unquote too blue. But layered with Payne's Gray and the warm gray, it really just enriched the shadow and made it deeper and richer. That's the word I can only use for that. So it's very subtle. You really have to look at it closely to see that I actually have a little bit of a blue tint in those bone parts. It's mainly gray, you can hardly see it, but for whatever reason our brains are smart enough to recognize it nonetheless. And I'm having my big old head in the way all the time because I've been so concentrated that I again forgot that I'm actually filming and that I should maybe have my head tilted to the side a little more and make sure that you can see the whole bookmark on the screen. So sorry about that. So for the tail, I worked quite a bit on that tail, really darkening it up and making sure that it looks like it's sitting, well, between the legs, but going towards the back. So I chose to color the two legs. Oh, no yawning. Sorry. Then I opted for shading those two legs towards the left and right of the tail a little lighter, just to bring it to the foreground and have the tail between the legs shaded way darker to push it back and not be the focus of that part of the painting. And that took quite a while because I made sure I didn't just go too dark. So I layered and layered and layered and gradually made sure that everything still fits together and it looks like part of that creature, but that I do have my values right and layer color on top in a way that made this look as the tail going towards the back. And in between, as you can see, I moved on to other bits and pieces of the Tyranid because I wanted to make sure that my brain is quote-unquote fresh. So I could concentrate on something else, and then come back to the tail and make sure, okay, what do I see now? Are my values correct? Do I need to darken it up a little more? And it's pretty much a back and forth that I did there to make sure that everything fits together well. Again, just shading, shading, shading. Lots and lots of shading. And you can see already I'm using my Payne's Gray a tiny little bit as an outline, but I will definitely enhance that a little later with a black pencil to make those lines pop even more and bring the creature into the very foreground. So the light is coming from the upper and lower right hand side. The light sources are off painting, you can't see them, but I painted in some snow and ice in the end, and that is pretty much the light source, the second light source that you can see that is in frame, because snow or ice do reflect light. So by bringing in some ice crystals and some snow on the bottom of the bookmark, you can actually see one light source that explains the highlights on the legs. So again, I'm getting back to the tail, darkening it up quite a bit. For me, it helps to sometimes squint or just very quickly cross my eyes so that I lose focus when I look at my drawing or my picture, my painting, whatever. And I just see my values of the colors, and then I can decide, okay, are my values correct, or do I need to darken up some shadows? Do I need to put a highlight somewhere? And that really helps. So I recommend you try just very quickly crossing your eyes or squinting, so that you don't look at your art piece with the eagle eye focus that you usually have. And there's the black pencil bringing that in, just going around bits that you can't see because my big old head is in the way again. I'm so sorry. One day I will learn. Or I will have a glass skull and you can just look right through me. That either I will learn or it will be a glass skull. We'll see. Gotta have one surprise, right? So I'm just, again, going around the whole creature, just adding tiny little details here, tiny little lines to make it stand out and sophisticated. And again, I'm squinting like every 30 seconds before I go to another piece of the picture where I need to make sure that my values are correct. Again, the black for the outline to also make the tongue pop. And once I was happy with the colored pencil part, I did add some splashes with thinned down acrylic paint, white in that case, so it's kind of representing snowflakes for one, or since this creature is probably in a fight and it's icy around it, it's crushed ice that's just flowing up into the air. So it's kind of like a mixture of both. It could also be stars on the very top of the bookmark. And here it is. There's the ice that I was talking about and the snow. So that is a that makes reflect the light from the off bookmark light source. And I started with thinned down white acrylic paint for those little more subtle splashes that are going to be in the background. They will fade a tiny bit now that I'm putting heat to it and let them dry. And then I changed to white acrylic paint, the same one as you can see, but not have it watered down. And I'm just using that fan brush again and just sprinkle very tiny little dots, very tiny little splashes. That could be just crushed ice in the earth while the fight is going on. They hit, I don't know, some ice on the ground and then flows up, something like that. Or it could be stars, or it could be snowflakes. That's up to the viewer to decide what they want it to be. And I think for me, it's a combination of all the three. So after that, I went in with the gel pen again, and like I said earlier, and went over some of the parts where there should be like a harsh highlight, and also did draw in the teeth. And once I had that done, to make sure that the colored pencil won't transfer to book pages, I did spray it with fixative spray and also put a hole on the top, because when you have a bookmark, you have to have some pieces or some bit peek out of the book so that you know where you are. So I've been adding some yarn, which I'm gonna do in a hot second. But first, a few tiny little details with gel pen. Just on the back and the front. I'm also signing my work on the back. It's very subtle, you can hardly see it, but it's signed. And now's the time for the fixative spray. And yeah, a little bit of black marker for the eye. Again, adding my final details. Once I was happy, I did bring in the fixative spray and just sprayed the front the front part where the pigment of the colored pencil sits on top. And this needs a minute to dry, so in that time I did get my yarn and decided on what colors I wanted to use, and I opted for white, blue and purple, and did have 3 strings of each color that I cut to the same length-ish, and then I just braided them. So first separating the purples from the blues and the whites, because I didn't want to have them mixed when I braided, but I wanted a blue strand and a purple one and a white one. And I'm pretty much just sorting and then having a simple braid going on. And in the end I did put a knot, just a normal double knot with the white strand, and cut the excess of the yarn, and then my bookmark was ready. And it was highly appreciated that I made that bookmark. Sebastian really likes it. He was quite surprised but very happy that I made it for him. And that pretty much ends the video for today. So I hope you enjoyed, and maybe it inspired you to, well, make a bookmark of your own with maybe one of the nerdy franchises that you like a lot, or that the recipient that you're thinking about maybe likes a lot. You can pretty much paint anything. It doesn't have to be Warhammer, but yeah, make it your own. I hope you like it. The blog post is up by now, so you can read up on my webpage pinselgeschichten.de in case you want to see which supplies and which pencils exactly I used. It's all listed, so you don't have to guess. And I will see you in 2 weeks with another art project. I'm not sure what I'm gonna have done then, but thank you very much for watching. Have a great day and do some art. Take good care, guys. Bye.